Okay, Mr. Jones, you were up first, and give me a minute while I get through to the question here. So, number 7 described the 2023 changes to the district's educational equity policy as expanding the definition of diversity so broadly they diluted the intention and putting the responsibility of equity on the student, the district, or staff. Despite the recommendations of Superintendent Aaron King and the results of a community survey not to change the policy, the board made the changes. What is your position on the 2023 changes and how the board handled them?
I stood at the public podium during the 2021 timeframe when this was all being considered. And I spoke up in the fact that it heartened me for one reason, that kids that were being, I would say, denied their right to speak in their religious faith in schools. And I heard from parents that two of his children, both in 2 separate years, were told that they could not express their religious faith within their English classroom. And I said, I'm glad to hear that you're going to protect the religious rights of our children in every one of our classrooms, because I never want to hear about that again. But at the same time, it felt like they were in an echo chamber and they were not listening to a lot of the outside voices saying, there's more to this. There is more to this. There are more diverse ways for education to be equitably delivered to our children. And for that reason, I believe a lot of time, effort, and input from the community came in as they looked at that. It was additive only. It was additive only. They didn't take things away from it. A lot of people in the community wished they had torn it up, but they didn't do that. They added things to it because this is a school district that is responsible for just equitably providing an education to every single child. I approve of what they did.
Sure. So I remember this very vividly because I believe I was probably the one that talked about expanding the definition of equity was diluting it, because it was adding, it was instrumental diversity, cognitive diversity. There were multiple types of diversity that were added. And what I was trying to explain was the policy is in place and we hold the superintendent accountable to achieving that policy. So we would be asking the superintendent to report back to us on, are we achieving instrumental diversity? Are we achieving cognitive diversity? Like, we are so limited with resources, and our research has shown us the reason we were putting the policy in place was because there were issues with racial equity and other types of equity in our schools. There was a reason those definitions were in there the way they were in there. And so that was the dilution of the equity definition by expanding it to include areas that I think would be ludicrous for us to be asking our teachers to report back on whether they're achieving instrumental diversity in their classroom and cognitive diversity. And so that was my rationale for questioning that at that board meeting.
Thompson. Thank you. I love your point, Susan, that policies need to be policy that you can actually implement. They need to be practical. And we know that there are disparities across student groups in our district, right? They're evident. We've seen it. We've already all discussed it and acknowledged it. And we also know that when students feel welcome and safe, that academic achievement increases. I do not like the changes in the 2023 policy for the reasons that Susan stated, and also because of the process that was used to make those changes. The original policy was done in such a collaborative and thoughtful way, and then to turn around and strip its very essence was inappropriate and disheartening, and we can do better.
So I don't agree with the changes because I am one of those people that would have got rid of it. When resources are limited, you simplify the mission. It does not get any simpler than do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We don't need to subdivide, categorize, create 3-ring binders with subsections and penalties and paragraph. The more complicated you make it, the further we will get from the mark, period. That's just a fact. That's what happens. Human beings shut down and they go to their base instinct. So, yeah, I think that if we could just get kids to treat other kids the way they want to be treated, we could focus on that instead of focusing on pushing down college-level political opinions into our school district. I think we'd do a lot better, and I think kids would get along a lot better. Like I said, I grew up in a place where I didn't recognize anyone's color. I didn't need to. We all played in the same neighborhood. We all lived on the same street. We ate the same food. There were no differences. Kids were kids were kids were kids. We've made things so much better in the 21st century.
I sat in the school board and saw an 85-pound freshman girl talk about how she can't walk down the hallway without being insulted for her gender or her perceived sexuality. I listened to a black family say, we were called the N-word in our schools, and the school didn't address it. I saw a Castle Rock principal say that he has a white supremacy problem in the school and he doesn't know how to address it. So no, I don't think we've gotten past those distinctions. I don't think our kids have gotten past those distinctions. Is it better now than I was growing up in the 70s? Probably. Is it done? No. I think we need focused issues and focused solutions. If we have kids with diverse learning styles, that's dealt with in our special education. Doing that. But the bottom line is there are still discriminated against groups, and that we didn't create those. And so I think the equity policy needs to be focused. The board majority didn't come in intending to modify the equity policy. They came in to kill it. And the only reason they didn't kill it is because members of the community, and Susan, and David Gray, and Elizabeth Hanson told them you can't do it, and then they got caught. And that's the only reason those changes got made. And if we have a board of 7 people who are going to sit there and nod along, then I fear the equity policy will not further survive. So I don't agree.
Ms. Meek, you'll be the first to respond to this, and this will be the final question of today's forum. What, if any, actions would you have the district take to ensure a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and safe environment for students and teachers alike?
I'm sorry, could you say it just one more time?
Absolutely. What, if any, actions would you have the district take to ensure a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and safe environment for students and teachers alike?
Sure, so what actions? So what we learned, we've been talking a lot about equity and where our district is at this point in time. You know, we put policies in place. And again, as I said earlier, policy really doesn't mean anything unless it's being implemented. And so the survey that went out to our community asking about their input on the educational equity policy, with the majority of people being very supportive of the policy, but the majority of people being very frustrated that they didn't understand how it would be implemented. So the actions would be actually reviewing those monitoring reports that come back to our board, which is exactly what I advocated for when the current board majority was elected and wanted to rescind that policy because they had concerns that there might be students being harmed. My point was, if you have those concerns, you don't kick the can down the road. You monitor the report immediately so you can address those concerns. So I'm a little heated about this because this is what I've been advocating for the whole entire time. That policy is to ensure that no student is harmed or shamed or blamed. It is to help each and every student. So the action would be holding our superintendent accountable to implementing the policy.
Thank you. Really well said, Susan. When we talk about diversity, continuing to advocate for it. I continually advocate for our LGBTQI students who are impacted by a recent policy that was passed, our parent engagement policy that calls for misgendering of students, that calls for outing the students. We talk about equity, centering and considering all groups in making decisions. We're talking about safety. I think continued support of the district's advances in this area. The district has been working hard on this. Made since 2018, the last passing of the MLO bond with addressing safety and security and mental health in our schools, counselors in all of our schools. I'm not scared of university level academia. I know how to read research, and I think that is something that I can provide to the board, is being able to disseminate evidence-based practices.
So let's start with transparency. By my count, the current board majorities cost us about $1 million between the several lawsuits that could have been used in, security, which we've done a lot on parchment. We've not done a lot meaningful actually where the rubber meets the road. The children are no more safe today than they were that horrible day in May 2019. And if you're a parent of a high school student, your freshman comes and goes as they wish, even though they're not supposed to leave the campus. If the district can't tell you where your child is, they cannot guarantee your child's safety. We need to seriously focus on security. Seriously focus on it. All options should be on the table. We have one chance at educating a child. If you want them to feel safe and included, you better know where they are. Because if you don't know where they are, you can't tell me they're safe. You can't tell me they're safe, they're not learning. The minute they leave campus, all other forces come into play. And that's a fact. And I've been through it as a parent who had the district fail one of his children.